Well, without further ado, I'm going to introduce our first panelist. Steve Darcy is going to jump right in and start talking with you guys about soil and water conservation.
Good afternoon. It's so good to see such young, interested faces in soil and water conservation. So somebody has to give me a heads up, like when I have 5 minutes, 2 minutes, or whatever, because I can just kind of talk all day long.
Will do, Steve. And sorry to cut you off. I just want
Yep.
to put in one reminder to our participants. We are recording this meeting. I need to make sure I let you all know that. And also, if you have any questions for Steve, please just drop them in the chat while he's talking. We'll address them all at the end. Sorry, go on, Steve.
No problem. So there's several questions that we want to try to answer today. First of all, what is my job? So I'm the executive director of the Prince George's Soil Conservation District. We're located in Prince George's County, Maryland. My job as a director, or some districts call themselves district managers, is to watch over conduct the day-to-day activities for locally led soil and water conservation programs here in Prince George's County. We work with multiple other partners, Prince George's County, Maryland Department of Agriculture, and also USDA, NRCS. We have 5 broad programs. I'll go through them briefly. We also work with other stakeholders in the county, at the county, state, local level, and even at the federal level. So I oversee a budget of almost $3 million. That's monies from local, from the county, from the state of Maryland, and from USDA, and then also we manage several grants. Next slide. So while the slide is advancing, how did I get here? We had a brief conversation before the students logged on. So I'm a 4th generation Prince George's County farmer, been farming all my life. And when I grew up, I didn't want to do anything else but stay on the farm. Well, I was able to attend the University of Maryland College Park. I drove to school every day, came home to the farm. When I was in my junior year, that was 1979. I know that seems like ancient history to you guys, but anyway, 1979 was really bad times for agriculture nationally. So my father, who always gave me very good advice, not all of it I heeded, but this advice I did heed, he said, you need to go get a job. He said, you can always farm part-time. You're always welcome here on the farm. So I did. I ventured out and worked 5 years with Ag Research Center in Beltsville, and then was lucky enough to get an entry-level engineering position with the local soil conservation district. So I started with the district in 1986 as an entry-level soil water conservation engineer, worked my way up through the ranks, and in 2013 became the director. So we work with many stakeholders. Well, let me go through the slide first. So 2021 marks the 80th anniversary for our Prince George's Soil Conservation District. We were formed under state legislation April 7th, 1941. Maryland has a very unique conservation partnership. We're one of 23 other soil conservation districts in the state of Maryland, and we're one of over 3,000 districts nationally and including some territories. We receive funding and equipment operating funding from our primary stakeholders, or our primary partners. Like I say, that's the local government, Maryland Department of Agriculture, and USDA Natural Resources. Next slide. So our budget is, you can see, primarily provided by our local government, and we're very appreciative of that. Our next largest would be the feds, and then the state. We also have an urban program where in the state of Maryland, by statute, soil conservation districts are responsible for reviewing and approving all erosion sediment control plans. So through that, we're allowed to charge a fee structure, so that's part of our budget. And then, of course, we have several grants that we manage. Next slide, please. Some of our stakeholders, local, state, federal government, the local forestry board. Work very closely with them. The local food equity council. We also partner with the Maryland Association of Soil Conservation Districts, the National Association of Soil Conservation Districts. We're involved with state colleges, land grant colleges, also some of the community colleges, and of course some non-government organizations such as Hughes Center for Agro-Ecology. And so our soil conservation district, we're charged with developing and implementing locally led soil and water conservation programs. So we have 5 broad programs: urban development and conservation, our rural agricultural conservation, our ag land preservation, our outreach education, and then our urban ag conservation. Next slide, please. So under our urban development, you'll see I tried to highlight certain jobs that are associated with this program. This is, we have 6 engineers in our district. Prince George's County is always an expanding county, a lot of development going on. We have a tremendous workload. Our 6 engineers review over 1,800 plan submissions on an annual basis. We collaborate with federal, state, and local engineers, engineering companies, developers, other soil conservation districts on implementing these erosion sediment control practices. We also train other inspectors in the county. By law, we do the erosion sediment control plans, and then another entity does the inspection. Next slide. Under our agricultural program, that's our bread and butter. When I say that, soil conservation districts formed under federal law in 1937 out of the Great Dust Bowl, trying to help farmers at the local level to repair the damage from the Dust Bowl errors. In Prince George's County, believe it or not, we still have 60,000 acres of rural agricultural land. Most of that, 70% of that, is owned privately. So you can see some of the highlighted positions. Planners, that's a big deal in soil and water conservation. These folks go out and work with the farmers, the ranchers, the landowners, and walk their farms and take an inventory of their soil and water resources and what they need to protect those natural resources. Engineering technicians is another big one. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. You can see there's a variety of BMPs that we use in Prince George's County. Go ahead, next slide. I only have 4 minutes left, so. Agricultural land preservation, this is a big one. We're the only soil conservation district, back up one. We're the only soil conservation district in Maryland, and I think maybe in the United States, that administers land preservation programs for their local county government. And since we took over that program about 13, 14 years ago, we now have 76 properties with over 7,100 acres preserved. Next. Our newest program is Urban Ag Conservation. We received a $50,000 grant from NACD, that's National Association of Conservation Districts, I think 3 or 4 years ago, and we took that money and built a new program. So we were asked to highlight one of our accomplishments. That's one of our biggest accomplishments. We built a brand new program out of a $50,000 grant. We were able to convince county exec's office and our county council that this was needed. Prince George's County, we have over 900,000 residents. So many people are now getting into urban agriculture. We wanted to be part of that, working with those landowners and those urban ag producers to make sure that they were addressing soil and water conservation. Next. So outreach and education, I'll touch on this briefly. We have multiple outreach programs and education. Our flagship program, of course, is the local Envirothon. And because of the COVID, last year, nobody had Envirothons. This year, they're going to have a state Envirothon. we're the only district, I really have a hard time believing this, but we're the only district that's going to conduct local envirothons. And we're going to have, I think we have 6 schools and 9 teams. One of the things we're very proud of, we give out scholarships to high school students. We've awarded over $26,000 for higher education over the years. Next. That's pretty much it. So I think that's it. I think my time's up anyhow. So if anybody has any questions, I guess we're holding questions till the end.
Yeah, that would be my preference. And then we'll be able to have a little bit more of a back and forth with them, hopefully. But if you want to put them in the chat now so you can remember them, feel free to.
So let me make one comment before Harry cuts me off.
Go ahead.
I was sitting here before the session today, just brainstorming about job opportunities that are related to soil and water conservation. I came up with a whole spreadsheet. There's probably 30 different jobs on here, and it ranges from administrative to contract specialist to the farmer, of course, to bioag technicians that help farmers with nutrient management, and drones. That's one of the big jobs out there. Have engineers, geologists, agronomists, entomologists, soil scientists. There's a whole plethora of technical jobs related to this line of work. And I didn't realize until I was out of college, nobody really told me about soil conservation districts, but you have a soil conservation district in almost every county in the United States. You have a Department of Agriculture in every state, and you have USDA Natural Resource Conservation Service that is in every state, every county, and territories like Puerto Rico. So the job opportunities are out there. You just have to be looking for them. Most districts have internships throughout the country, and so there's ways to get in the door.
Thank you, Steve. And I'm going to see if I can maybe get that list from you and send it out to our participants afterwards. I think that would be fantastic.
I'll dress it up.
One or the other of us can. Yeah. Eric, do you want to get started?
Yeah, sure will. Thank you, Harry, and thank everybody at the Hughes Center for the chance to be here. But thank you all for taking time out today to come and listen to kind of how I got where I am today. So I'm a regional watershed restoration specialist. I'm one of 5 people that hold that title. We're scattered around different parts of Maryland. I'm also a faculty member at the University of Maryland in the Extension program, which is housed within AGNR as well. So for those of you that don't know Extension, the role of the Extension program across the state is to take research-based information and get it into the hands of Marylanders so they can make informed decisions to improve their lives. And whether that's related to water quality, like the work that I do, youth development through the 4-H program, healthy living, or working on the farm to improve crop yields while decreasing the impact from agriculture. So there's a host of programs within Extension that share information. And there's an Extension office in every county and in Baltimore City, and there are combined 400 faculty and staff members that are serving all of Maryland. Some of my responsibilities is each year I put together a plan that outlines what I'm supposed to accomplish within this kind of general framework. So that includes me working with local government and others to identify and implement water quality improvement projects related to urban stormwater management that are intended to meet the cleanup goals of the Chesapeake Bay. So to do this, I actually work with a number of grant programs, some that are administered by the Maryland Department of Natural Resources, but also those that are administered by other organizations such as the Chesapeake Bay Trust and the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation. Also do education and outreach to a variety of different groups on a bunch of different topics, range from bay water quality, dealing with urban stormwater runoff, and the use of small scale best management practices that people can use, whether it's around their home or small businesses. And this would include rain gardens, rain barrels, practices such as that. One of the questions we were asked to bring up was how we got engaged in this kind of work. And the the best way to describe it for me is not a straight line. I went into the Navy after high school and was there for 5 years. After that, they weren't doing a lot of hiring at the time in the fields that I had been in. So I got into land surveying and construction for a 5-year period. Now, despite the first one of those being less than minimum wage and an entry-level position that didn't require any particular skills, I learned a lot in those very first jobs that I had as far as certain technical aspects and how earth was moved and what equipment could do and how to calculate slope, things that a lot of people take for granted. But I use some of these things literally every day. How many acres, or how many square feet in an acre and things like that is stuff that just kind of pings around my brain. Anyway, my professional career didn't start until 1990, when I entered the field of erosion and sediment control and stormwater management, also at a local soil conservation district, but this one was in southern Delaware. I did that for a few years and then actually became the manager of the conservation district, which included all aspects, like Steve was talking about, of managing the budget as well as employees. Back in the early 90s, though, this was kind of that step for both a lot of organizations, but me personally, into all things water quality. TMDLs were popping up, the total maximum daily loads. We were getting into nutrient management. We were learning about non-point source pollution grants and things like that, all in an effort to help improve water quality. It was also at this point in my professional career that I started working on my associate's degree. And I really want to acknowledge the work that Steve and the rest of the districts in Maryland are doing. What I got started in was just baby steps. They are light years ahead of the work with water quality on farms and the work with, construction sites and things like that. So a tip of the hat, because they're at the very front of what's taking place with bay water quality. So after 10 years of managing the conservation district, I went to work for a small environmental nonprofit also in southern Delaware, but this time doing habitat restoration and water quality improvement projects. And when I started that job, I'm a bit of a slow learner, but I just completed my associate's degree in business and was starting my bachelor's degree as an environmental studies major, or environmental studies as a policy major. So I did that for 12 years, working in southern Delaware doing habitat projects. And I had just completed my bachelor's degree. I'm a slow learner, I'm willing to admit it. But I completed my bachelor's degree in 2014 at exactly the same time that this position with the University of Maryland Extension came open as a regional watershed specialist. And so I applied. A couple of things about, how I became engaged in this kind of work. Number one, when I got out of the Navy, I did not plan on being here. I did not have a plan. I've just kind of bumped into walls and make a turn or see an open door and go through it. I didn't even think about applying for a job like this until I had the degree, which, allowed it to become available to me. Basically, things just happened, and I'm very happy and fortunate that they did. Another thing that kind of, got me going in this direction was over the years, I had a lot of great people that were encouraging me along the way. They wanted me to succeed. And, if there's one thing you can walk away with when you go into, a new profession or a new business or something like that, is surround yourself with people like that, people that are going to try to help you. I have worked for some folks that really didn't care whether I succeeded or not. I was a warm body that had a task to do, and that was it. So surround yourself with good people. Like Steve, work with a variety of different stakeholders. And Harry, since you're timing this, please flag me if I look like I run long. I work with county and municipal government. So for those of you who haven't spent time on the Eastern Shore, it's mostly small towns over this way. And so they don't have a lot of people on staff to focus on doing water quality projects. So I assist with project identification. I do education and outreach work in the community. I help with grant and stormwater technical assistance. Basically, I'll follow a project from concept to completion. And depending upon the organization I'm working with, I'm kind of like part-time staff, except that they can't fire me. I also work with non-governmental and nonprofit organizations, homeowner associations, and watershed groups. And it's very similar. I help to identify potential projects, make sure that they align with certain types of grants, and then I assist with trying to get those projects moving forward. Work with faith-based organizations. Interfaith Partners for the Chesapeake is a big one in our region. And so quite often I'll assist in certain counties with locating and sizing small practices on some of their churches and synagogues. Just, also do education and outreach work with members that are involved with them. And then I work with individual landowners. And this is one that, because it's been kind of a slightly wet year, they're popping up like mushrooms on a warm summer day. But I provide technical assistance on what they call nuisance flooding, but also ways that they can reduce stormwater runoff from their property, or if they're looking for a living shoreline project. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pop up, if I think I have share screen here, one project that I consider to be a major accomplishment. And this is one over at Adkins Arboretum near Ridgely, Maryland. And it was a parking lot retrofit project that we worked on. And basically we took their parking lot and turned it into a giant stormwater best management practice. Now, what was interesting about this project, it started as a very casual meeting on site to talk about ways they could green the parking lot. But it turned out that we came up with this plan that we want to put in some stormwater management since it was built before the regulations existed. We managed to kind of a high performing team that we worked with. We all brought different skills to the table. We managed to get a number of grants that got both an engineered design as well as construction funds, and turn this project from concept to completion in 2 years, which is pretty quick in kind of the realm of getting things done. And what was kind of a much larger challenge was they had a big fundraiser, and the contractor had about 90 days from breaking ground to putting the last plan in the ground. So to turn something around in 3 months was absolutely amazing. And this first picture, the before is the exact same landscaped area, except it was expanded, replanted, and stormwater flows into it for some initial treatment instead of around it into the catch basin that you see located right in this area here. And they used pavers to help allow the water to soak into an underground pipe system. So here's another view looking across that area. You can see that some of the parking was replaced and the storm drain system is gone. It was replaced with the pavers and plantings. And these boxed in areas here are submerged gravel wetlands, which help treat the water before it enters the storm drain system and then works its way down into the Tuckahoe Creek and the Choptank River. And you can see it looks so much nicer, much more appealing, and more appropriate for an arboretum to have an entryway like this. And this is just the last picture, but this is where they gave up about 5 parking spots to turn it into a stormwater facility, a bioretention facility with underground piping and things. And again, to be able to walk into this facility, instead of walking on concrete and asphalt, you now have to wind your way through these little native plant areas that actually have a job. So I'm going to stop the share, and I think I'm close to wrapping up here. We were asked to offer up some words of wisdom that I wish somebody had shared with me at the beginning of kind of my career. And I've got a couple of little ones. And the first one is listen more and talk less. I get paid to do a lot of talking. And sometimes I find myself in meetings, whether it's Zooms, in person, wherever, when someone else is talking and I think I've got the answer, I'm jumping to the solution. And what happens is my ears close and I'm ready to engage the first time they stop to catch their breath. And there's been a downside to that in that I've missed some really good conversations, some good information. I've had to embarrass myself by going back and saying, hey, what happened after this word? Because I was tunnel vision on some kind of solution. So, I would say that would be an important one, just, helping in every aspect of your lives. Another one I wish somebody had shared with me, because I've worked at a number of different places over the year and had to apply for jobs, is spelling counts. I've reviewed a number of applications. I've been the hiring person. And for those of you that are getting ready to enter the job market, your cover letter, your resume, or even that email of interest is your first introduction to a potential boss. So do it right. Make sure the grammar is right. You're capitalizing. Don't take it casual. Don't put a smiley face in there because you think this is the greatest job. Be professional because this is your first contact with folks. And like I say, spelling does count. And then lastly, who's at the table? If you do get your chance to get a foot in the door and you go in for an interview, take the time to learn about the organization. I have been asked to thread in how I felt my interests aligned with the mission of the organization. And man, I didn't look it up and I tried the old song and dance. I was making something up. Do some research before you get into the interview, learn what their mission is, if they have goals, any way you can thread in, oh, by the way, I noticed you just launched this new web platform and I think we could. And if you can tie something about that organization in, you've just moved up one notch as far as folks that are coming in and say, I don't know what you do, but it looked like a really cool job. So learn who's there and then, or, their organization and tied into kind of what it is, you're interested in, your passion. And Harry, do I have time for the last one or am I running out?
It's fine, Eric. Go ahead.
Okay, this is just simply about how you all interested in a career could get engaged. Internships are great, that hands-on experience. I've helped with a couple of interns in the past. They at least didn't send me like hate letters after they moved on. So I guess I did an okay job. But I don't want you to overlook volunteer opportunities and simple things, volunteering for an organization, whether it's a stream cleanup, a community trash cleanup, a tree planting day. Getting out there and doing these sorts of things, number one, expands your network of like-minded individuals, but it's an opportunity to connect with an organization that one day may have a job opportunity come up, or you never know who volunteers or serves for a board that works for a similar organization that you're sitting there talking to while picking up some trash and goes, oh yeah, I used to work over here, call so-and-so, they know how to do this. So the network connections can really, really help. And again, it's a chance to just get out and learn a new skill or meet some new people. And with that, I'm done.
Thank you so much, Eric. And I was going to hold questions till the end, but I think we had one that was particularly relevant for you. Kathleen asked you, what kind of vegetation do you recommend for that planting?
There's that dreaded mute. For the one, the Adkins project, if it was about that, Adkins Arboretum is a native plant arboretum, and they were very, very involved in it. But we did notice that the landscape architect firm had a couple of non-native ones for this part of Maryland. So we did send it back with a couple of revisions, but it's all native plants, all perennials, combination of perennial wildflowers, some shrubs, as well as trees. So definitely coastal plain native.
An important catch there. Oh, Sadie, without further ado, if you want to get started, we'd love to have you.
Yeah, sure. I'm going to put a link in the chat. So hi, everybody. I'm Sadie Drescher. I'm the Director of Restoration Programs at an organization called the Chesapeake Bay Trust. We're a nonprofit organization, quasi-state. And like Eric mentioned, one of the things that we do to support environmental restoration and environmental education and capacity building is to fund projects through grant projects or contracts. So that's one of the things that we do. But our overall mission is to support the community, get better bay quality, engage everybody in this, whether it's school kids getting out onto the bay or learning with their teachers, or restoring a big wetland, things like that. So that's where I work, and the link is there. If you scroll to the bottom of the homepage, there's some scroll back and forth. You can see before and after wetlands projects, and you can look at our different grant projects and learn a little bit more about our staff and things like that. But I have a couple of other links I'll share with you as I go through. And I think I have a super busy day today, like I'm sure everybody else does that was asked to speak, but I love doing these things just because it's kind of cool to share what you've been doing and how you got there. And so I wanted to just tell you a little bit about how I got where I am, because I think it's really important. And I think it's important to share your story and to always remember who you are. And like when you have bumps in the road, just think about ways that you can improve. And the many, many, many failures that you will encounter are just opportunities to learn and grow. So, that is definitely like the take home point. So I grew up in Tennessee. My mom is Native American from Arizona. Her last name is Castaneda, and my father's from Pennsylvania. So we grew up in rural Tennessee, Eastern Tennessee. That's where I lived. Super, super poor. I grew up without running water or electricity until I was in junior high school. And it was sort of by choice, but not always. Like my dad was an old hippie, but he also, we didn't have a lot of fun. So I think that's an important part of the story because it's why I got involved in the environmental movement. We had, outhouses. If you guys aren't familiar with those, I ran into them again when I visited Peru. We had well water and we had our neighbor's septic system like running onto our property. And so just getting clean water and having access to that was always really important to me. We used to get water from a spring and have to boil it and things like that, which, you think that doesn't happen in America, but it definitely does. And a lot of other countries, are dealing with it now. And it's happening now to people on the Eastern Shore I've gotten emails from, as well as, other folks throughout the United States. And so I think the importance of being outdoors where I grew up and hiking in the woods and having an appreciation for nature, but also having that access to clean water, which at the time I didn't realize that was even like a struggle or a thing, but that's something I've always been interested in. So it's important to recognize like where you came from. And so I grew up in a very small town with one stoplight and, ended up going to college at Tennessee Technological University and studied environmental biology with a minor in wildlife fisheries biology. And again, just like, I was like, what should I do? And then I was just like, I'm just really interested in water and water quality. And so that's kind of where that all came from and the appreciation for nature. So then after that, I was always working through school. So I didn't really take the opportunity to do a lot of internships that were more like focused to my major. So I kind of like didn't have a leg up like many of you guys probably did. So definitely, take those opportunities like Eric was mentioning. But I ended up working at Oak Ridge National Laboratory for the Biochemical Engineering Research Group. And they were so great working with those engineers and learning how to set up experiments, learning how to run a gas chromatograph, liquid chromatograph. Anyway, they were just wonderful. We did a lot of partnering with Wisconsin farmers to make methane out of gas. So that was really cool. The farmers did the methane farm conversions, and we did the seeing how like the gas, how we could get more methane out of it, and then they would adjust their farms. Anyway, things like that. But it was really cool. And then my supervisor at the time, kind of like Eric mentioned, really tap into your mentors. He was like, Sadie, you're gonna have to go to graduate school. I was like, fine. So he's like, if you want to get further in life, you have to go to graduate school. So I did. I applied to a graduate school in Charleston, South Carolina, and got a scholarship to go there and worked for the USDA Forested Wetlands Group, studying denitrification and stormwater ponds. Super cool. I'd never really heard about stormwater that much because Tennessee was a little bit behind the times on stormwater management, and Charleston, South Carolina was a little bit up compared, but not compared here. So anyway, my job, I went to graduate school, studied, like I said, denitrification of stormwater ponds, kind of thinking about how nitrogen runs off a golf course and how it's processed in a constructed wetland. And then I worked for the state coastal program, sampling stormwater ponds, looking for algal and looking at water quality in the coastal area. So kind of learned about stormwater that way for the Science and Policy Division. Super cool, met lots of neat people, really learned a lot on that job. But then there was a little bit of a recession. And so, my supervisor was like, hey, I'm not sure if this job will last very much longer. I was there about 2 years, so you should look somewhere else. And so I did get a job at the Center for Watershed Protection, which is another nonprofit based here in Maryland, doing watershed plans, working with communities, getting out in the field, going after grant funds. And I worked there for about 5 years. So they're based in Maryland, but they do work all over the United States. So I got to go to American Samoa, did some work in Puerto Rico, and it was really cool. Worked all over Arlington, worked with a lot of really talented engineers, and learned a lot. So that was kind of like what Eric was saying, like listen and learn. And of course, made lots of mistakes along the way. So then I met Jana Davis, the executive director at the Chesapeake Bay Trust, working on a shoreline management panel for the EPA. And she was one of my panelists. We were just on a conference call earlier. And I was like, what are you doing today? She's like, oh, I'm interviewing for some jobs. And I was like, oh, really? What job? And I didn't even know there was a job open. So I went and Googled it. I was like, oh, that looks like a good job. And I had a beer with her down at Rams Head in Annapolis. And I was just like, so is this like a long-term job? This license plate things we're funded by the license plate, largely where I work now. Is that going to be a stable thing? And she was like, yeah, sure. It's going to be a really stable job. So I applied and got it, and then was promoted to director. And I have 4 staff members that work with me, wonderful folks that have background in environmental science. And right after this meeting, I'll be onboarding a new staff member. So that's kind of a little bit about how I got where I am. And I just think it's really important to like tell your story, kind of like the other panelists did, and always like be true to yourself and just like, learn from things and learn and grow. One of the things, where I work now, it's Chesapeake Bay Trust. Like I said, we make grants, but Nancy had asked me to talk about, and Harry had asked me to talk about the Chesapeake Conservation Corps. So let me put a link to that directly in the chat for you guys. And then my colleague Casey gave me a couple of things to say about it, but it's basically for young adults age 18 to 25, and you can apply to have a year of service. At Atkins Arboretum was one of the sites that we saw earlier. So the person that's applying, the group, like Prince George's County, they get a young person and you get experience. So it's a nice marrying. And so, think about applying to that. It might be something to do after college. And then another thing I wanted to put in the chat is just we have an internship open right now. So I wanted to put that in. That's a summer internship working at the Chesapeake Bay Trust. And it's a really cool place to work. We care a lot about diversity and inclusion, and thinking not only in the environmental world, like if we all are in this together, we're going to do better together. And so we care a lot about having all people at the table, kind of like what Eric mentioned. One of the things I'm most proud of was I got a grant when I worked at the Center for Watershed Protection to do a low impact development manual in South Carolina. And so, we do stormwater really cool up here, kind of like the things that Eric showed. We're really in the forefront of science, and they weren't as much. And so it was really cool to see that manual, develop it, and have the engineers from here go there and train them and see them use it. One of the things, like I said, I'm hiring someone new on my team, so I'm onboarding them next. That's my 1:30 appointment. And then tomorrow I have a technical review committee meeting where we are asking the question about what are the key restoration questions in the Bay that are holding restoration up, and how can we make best management practices more effective. So we're having 19 applications that are reviewed. We have about $1.1 million to award, and we have about 4.4 in requests. So we're having all the best and brightest kind of say, what are the top projects to fund? On Monday, I was in City of Salisbury, and I know I'm close to time here. I was in City of Salisbury looking at their Green Streets program because they had a lot of flooding, and so they kind of like had the water diverted into bioretentions on the street. And we're having a video to go and like look at, highlight that to tell the story. Because if you can't tell the story and people don't know what you're talking about, then it's like it never even happened. So that's a really important part of your job. And then I was at Harry Green Wetland in Kent County, looking at a 6-acre wetland for a pre-construction site visit at the Chesapeake Bay Foundation. So it was a farmer who couldn't farm that land, and he decided to convert that to a wetland. So the Chesapeake Bay Foundation, a nonprofit, helped them do that, and we supported that. So that was kind of cool to see that all come together. It's just getting started. So that's really it. I mean, like, I think I'm kind of near time, but that's a little bit about me and kind of like how I got where I am. And so, just always be true to yourself, ask questions, be curious about things, hold on to mentors, and be open to new opportunities and try things that are new. So those were the things I wanted to touch on here.
Oh, thank all three of you so much. That was fantastic to just get to hear from each one of you guys about the different jobs you do. Does anyone have any questions that they want to start off with? Remember, part of the goal here is for you guys not just to hear about what these people do, but to get to meet them and interact with them and give them your questions. Don't worry, I also prepared some. So one thing I would love to throw out to all three of you guys, whoever wants to take it. I think, having just graduated college, that there's some things I can think back on and say, okay, I could have done this differently. I could have taken advantage of this opportunity or spent more time on this rather than that. What do you all wish you'd done differently in college or early in your careers?
Well, college was a long time ago, so let me think about that. I wish I had gone outside. I was stuck on, I don't want to say stuck on the farm, but that was my real dream. I just wanted to be on the farm. So, even going to College Park campus was a big adventure for me because I never had left the farm. I think it's important to branch out, ask questions. I always made a habit, and probably that's how I got the job. I would always ask people, what do you do? How much money do you make? And, most people are very happy to tell you what they do, how they got there, and maybe how much money they make. But I don't think that I would really do anything differently, except that maybe just step away from the farm a little more. But as it has turned out for me, it's been a great career for a farm boy just off the farm. And I was lucky enough to go to school and apply my knowledge of the farm. And then as I gained knowledge in my conservation career, I would take that knowledge home and I would be my own guinea pig for doing things that I learned on the job, so that then I could take that knowledge and apply it to the farmers that I was working with, because I was on other farms and farmers in my community. So I would learn those things, take it home, try it, then I could tell you what worked and what didn't work. So it's a process, it's a journey. And I will tell you one thing, in soil conservation districts, most of the people I know in soil conservation districts have been in the same district for 20, 30 years. They've made a long-term career out of it. So the other thing I would say as a young person, if you're a homebody like me, local soil conservation district is the way to go. If you want to see the country, go with a federal agency like Natural Resource Conservation Service, because their whole program is to build you up and move you around. And I have a good friend that's in Arizona, and I bet you he worked in 30 different states in his career as a district conservationist.
So I would say for me, looking back, if I'd done something differently, I did have the chance to go to college after high school. My father and I could not quite come to terms on it. It was very amicable. And we've had kind of a strong family history in the military. So that was a viable option for me as well. I would suggest if you decide to go in the military, be sure to read the contract very closely. But yeah, I wish I had gone to school. So, if you have the opportunity to continue your education, do so. It took me 20 years to get a bachelor's degree. I kind of piecemealed it as I went along. And that's really difficult to do when you're working 40+ hours a week with 2 kids and commuting to and from work. So, get the education that you're comfortable with. Whether you stop at a bachelor's and move out, that's fine. Whatever, just go with it. And if you get a chance later in your career to take more classes, do so. Don't be afraid of it.
The only thing that I would add is just to have confidence in the knowledge that you have and to be able to speak up. Those are the things that I maybe would have done a little bit more.
And again, feel free, if anybody has any questions, just hop in whenever you want to. Yeah, please.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, was that you?
Sorry?
Oh, no, go ahead, Jessica, please.
Oh, so I'm currently a senior right now, and so I'm currently applying to a whole bunch of jobs. I guess I'm sort of struggling with finding out exactly what kind of jobs that I'm looking to apply to, whether that's like nonprofit or like public versus private. So I guess I'm just overwhelmed with applying to a whole bunch, but not really knowing if I'm a good fit for them or, if it's something that I would want to do long term. A lot of people just say, get your foot in the door. You might not like your first job, but I don't really want to go to work if I hate my job either. So I'm trying to find a good balance. So if you guys have any recommendations for that would be helpful.
My initial thought is that you probably don't know right now. And so I would just try something out and see if you like it. You can always move on to another job, get a good experience, never burn bridges, learn something new, and try it. So I think I've been in all those sectors, and probably Eric and Stephen have been in a lot of these too. So that's my advice. And I just looked at 150 resumes for this, and I echo what Eric said, to have good grammar and really, but you'll learn a lot from the interview if you like it or not. And, if you get there and it's not a good fit, again, learn from it, don't burn bridges, and move on.
One thing I always advise young people, don't look at the salary, look at the benefits. Meaning, are you going to an organization that has upward mobility? Are you going to an organization that has good health care? Are you going to an organization that has a good retirement system? At your age, that doesn't seem important, but I can tell you at 63, where I am, it's of utmost importance. So there's things I would have done a little differently. maybe gone to a different agency that had a better retirement system. But you know, it is what it is. I love my job. I'm passionate about what I do. So, you know, all that's a big part. There's not a lot of people, I don't think, that can say, I love my job. I love what I do. I can retire now. I've been eligible for retirement for 5 years, but I can't seem to pull myself away from the job because there's so many great opportunities. You're working with great people. And soil conservation districts, as independent political subdivisions of state government, we have a lot of flexibility and ability to do different things. You see the brochure behind me, that's a pull-up display of our newest program, our Urban Ag Conservation Program. So that's why, you know, that's why I'm still here. But I really do think you don't have to think of your first job as this is going to be it for life. You know, don't be afraid to move around until you find the right slot. But don't look at just the salary. Look at how you can build for your future. So health benefits and retirement are the ability to have 401 or 457B or whatever. Believe me, at your age, it doesn't seem important, but those next 30 years will go just like that. And you'll be saying, gee whiz, I should have listened to that guy, Steve Darcy, back there when I had that.
So I've had 9 jobs in 43 years, from delivering pizzas all the way up to where I'm currently at, faculty at University of Maryland. I do not leave a job every 4.5 years or whatever. It's actually more about every 12 years. I've chased the dollar. I had one job that made it 11 months. And that was the one that you fear the most, the toxic work environment. And I worked for people that settled disagreements with their fists and shovels, rather than trying to have a conversation and come to some compromise. I think what both Sadie and Steve have said is you know, absolutely correct. I would add that, you know, I too have a great job, absolutely love my job. And they say, if you find a job you love, you never work another day in the rest of your life. And this is where I hope to finish up, because I put in long days, I do weekends, I'm up late at night doing things, and it doesn't bother me because of what I'm doing and who I work for. I would also say that even the best job in the world has bad days. And that's going to happen. Now, if you reach a point with a position that the bad days begin outnumbering the bad, or it is totally obvious you're in a toxic environment where everybody's putting a knife in your back so that they can move up, or they're not giving you opportunities, like they said, to grow and to move forward and things like that, then you bail. But everything I've had along the way taught me something new, whether it was just to tough it out and wait for something better to come along. Like I say, I've chased the dollar. I've taken cut and pay to get, you know, a better position. Steve's right. You know, be sure to add dental into that whole collection of things. But yeah, you do have to look a little bit to the future, you know, but you'll find it. And I've worked for nonprofit. I've worked for local government. I've worked for academia. I've worked for the military. I've worked for the private sector. They all have their advantages and disadvantages. Some are more highly nimble and able to turn on a dime. You get involved with government, it's somewhat glacial, but there's you know what to expect. And so it just depends on whether you want to have those exciting days where your desk is on fire, you know, and the challenges, and you want to find good challenges, not bad. The bad challenges are the one that'll drag you down. You know, dysfunctional organizations exist. So that's where that due diligence, look at what's on their webpage. You know, if you can find somebody that may have worked for them before. And I always found it to be an interesting question, if they don't bring it up during the interview, is why did the last person leave this position? And see what their answer is. And if they're upfront with you, they'll say, well, oh, they took a new position over here, or, you know, yeah, we didn't leave on the best of terms, sort of thing. So the questions you ask during interviews are as important as what they ask of you.
Thank you guys.
So, Steve, you kind of covered this with your list, but could I ask Sadie and Eric to say real quick, give us like 5 jobs that you work with regularly that these people might be interested in. Sadie, you want to start?
Yeah, sure. I work with a lot of research scientists, but maybe you wouldn't do that right out of school, but maybe you would. I work with a lot of nonprofit staff members, and I work with a lot of state representatives. They are super overworked and really, really busy, as well as municipal representatives. I work with a lot of people in Prince George's County, Steve, at the Department of the Environment. I work really closely with those guys over there. Same thing, really talented. What'd you say?
The Clean Water Partnership.
Yeah, I work with Jeff Dehan and Jerry Maldonado and those folks. Yep, we have a grant program, and I lead that for them over the past 7 years. So I love those guys. Anyway, I work really closely with Prince George's County. Anyway, so a lot of the municipalities and state staff members, I work with them both as a partnership level and as like they get grant funds from us, and like a lot of the researchers like Sujay Kaushal at University of Maryland. So those are some of the people I work with. Eric.
Yeah, engineers, work with a lot of engineers and planners and things like that. But when I work with state agency folks and other organizations, they have a title that doesn't tell me what they do or what they did. It may say planner, it may say biologist, but I don't really know what goes into that because I don't read the job descriptions. But what I will say is, because one of you mentioned, that you've got a minor in GIS. A lot of people out there that I work with have either a GIS background or use it in their regular jobs. So that becomes an avenue into an interesting position, is that type of skill set. One of you had mentioned that your watershed management or something like that. I don't do watershed planning like Sadie has done, or some of the watershed work that Steve would have done back in the good old days with PL 566 and stuff like that. But I do with landowners. I give a description and things like that. So, you're going to walk out of there with, all these great little buckets of different kind of positions and things. And it may only be one that you really tap into to get your foot in the door with an organization. So, I don't know what's behind people's title, restoration coordinator. I don't know what that means necessarily as to how they got there. And hearing Sadie's kind of, I love it, Oak Ridge Lab to CWP and things like that was just phenomenal.
Fantastic. Does anybody else have any other questions you want to ask before we go?
I just have one question kind of about reaching out to organizations or companies. In the past, when I've looked for jobs, if I've been really interested in a specific company or organization, but I've gone on their websites and it says no jobs available or no current positions, would you guys recommend reaching out to express interest anyways, or like reaching out personally to talk about a position in the future?
And can I just add, if you would recommend that, how do you think is the best way to do it?
My experience has been most of the people I know get jobs by knowing somebody in an organization. I mean, they have to have the credentials, but somebody knows somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody. But if you're interested in, just say, soil conservation district, a district or any district, you can call up that district and just introduce yourself and say, what internships do you have? What job openings are there? Local county governments like Prince George's County, they have a job listings. You just go on their website and it'll list every job opening, even though there's a hiring freeze on because of the pandemic. We're hiring people every day in the county. So, I think you can get lost in all of the electronic means of trying to find a job. Sometimes it's best just to call or walk in and say, hey, I'm Sydney and I'm interested in this kind of work. What opportunities do you have?
Eric, do you have anything?
Don't overlook the power of a typed up letter, and just expressing your interest in the organization. But yeah, I think Steve's right. Email, you send an email and you're one of probably about 150 that I'm going to get today. And I'm not going to, be really rude or anything, but I'm probably going to say something, well, I'm not really hiring. So what you're right. I think Steve's right. Maybe reach out to them, you know, express your interest, find out if they have any events or activities going on. I would also suggest going to the Chesapeake network and signing up there. They have both a listing of jobs when they come out from all over the region, but they also have just a bunch of activities. And that's where I think Steve alluded to the networks, getting to know people that are doing certain things and making these connections. It's actually in kind of the restoration world, it's a relatively small group. Steve, within the soil and water conservation districts, it's a very small group, and you're bumping into the same people regularly. And Sadie, I'm sure with your work in the restoration world, you know, there's only a handful of contractors and so many people that are working with grants and projects that you know that you're going to see one person at least twice in a week in a Zoom or on a site. So try to establish a network, but do reach out and express interest. Tell them you're getting ready to graduate in this particular field and you'd like to learn more about the organization.
Yeah, I would just quickly add what's in it for the person that you're connecting, like why would they connect with you? That's really important. And then I help people all the time, but it's kind of like we're really busy. Like Eric, I'm working till 10 o'clock at night a lot of times. And so it's just hard to fit it in, even if we really, really want to. So just really have that why. And then I would recommend looking at the Harvard Business Review podcast or Googling something like that, because they have little short podcasts just about that. And I've seen some really moving ones. But anyway, I do need to go. I'm going to put something in the chat. It was so nice to see you guys.
Thank
Good
you.
Thanks so
question.
much for joining us, Sadie. And yeah, we are going to wrap up. Thanks everyone for coming today, and we hope to have future career events in maybe a similar format, maybe something different, hopefully when we can all be in person. And thanks again so much. And if anyone has any questions today, feel free to reach out to me. I'm going to put my email in the chat right now. And you all are more than welcome to just contact me if you have any additional questions. I'd be happy to forward them to people. If you want some resources today, whatever I can help you with, please don't hesitate to ask. Thanks for coming today, everyone.